Welcome back, Leveling Up Nation. This is your host and success story strategist, Brigham Blackham.
Working for 15 years with numbers, but the right brain is more emotional. It's the art, it's the heart instead of the head. So if you're able to touch and plug into the right side of the brain of someone, then you're able to sell what you've got to sell, whether it's an idea or a product or a grant application.
Welcome back, Leveling Up Nation. This is your host and success story strategist, Brigham Blackham. So grateful for you guys to be here with us today. It is a wonderful Thursday morning, and I am so blessed to have Alexandre Matte. He is a phenomenal speaker, a brilliant storyteller, and today we're going to talk about how to make stories that count. You're like, wait a second, that sounds like a pun. If I know you, absolutely it is a pun, because his background is in accounting, in making sure that he can be the chief financial officer for, I have to remember the exact company, but he'll tell us a little bit more about it. But basically, he has such a diverse background in finance that he transitioned all the way to storytelling. He's a coach and he is a brilliant speaker. He took second place in the world competition of public speaking for Toastmasters in 2022. So he has a diverse background. I'm so excited to have him on the call today. So good morning. How you doing, Alexandra?
Hi, Brigham. Good to be here with you.
Absolutely. Well, what a pleasure. And tell me a little bit more about your background in finance first, because I was like, I spaced the name of the place. It's like super impressive over in Colorado. Not in Colorado. I'm in Colorado, over there in Canada. So tell me a little bit about that experience.
I spent 15 years counting numbers for various organizations. The La Nouvelle Scène, a theater center in Ottawa, and then the Théâtre du Nouvel Ontario, a theater company in Sudbury when I moved to Northern Ontario. Wow. And then I spent 10 years with Le Carrefour Francophone de Sudbury. Mm-hmm. That might have been the one you were looking for. The oldest Francophone cultural center outside of Quebec, inside Canada, outside of Quebec. Mm-hmm. And I was fascinated by numbers. I still am. I like to count numbers, especially when it comes to money. So I had two screens, always with numbers in front of me, and trying to balance the books, making sure that we've got enough money coming in so that we can afford the money coming out to give all the services, including daycare services, musical shows, and festivals and lessons for the community. So I had a lot of fun doing that and making sure that we could offer everything that we had to offer to the community.
Wonderful. So it sounds like it's not just something that you're interested in. You spent 15 years, honestly, a whole career, really diving into what it takes to make things count and add up. So how have you taken that experience in finance and been able to translate those things into the stage and on all the different ways that you've done that with storytelling?
Well, it's almost a coincidence that I went into speaking and storytelling. After I moved to Sudbury in 2007, I was new in the city. I had almost no friends, no family, so nothing to do after I finished my work day. And then I got an invitation from a Toastmasters club. I think I might have thunk. Is that a word?
I like it.
I was thinking, I've heard this before, but I'm not sure what they do. But I had nothing else to do in the evening, and I had no car, but the meeting was right next door. So I thought, all right, I've got nothing to lose. Let's see what they do. And I thought, maybe I'm going to be overwhelmed because these people are practicing public speaking and they know how to present themselves. I'm going to be there just not knowing what to do. And that's partly true. But what I also found out is that they were all learning. There were different people from different careers, different stages in their life, but all learning the art of public speaking. And it took me a few weeks before deciding to jump in and do it. But because I saw that would be able to help me in my own career. So I remember Michel, who was the president of the club. He was Also we call it the Toastmaster of the day, or l'animateur de la réunion. And I thought, wow, he knows how to command the silence, how to direct traffic, to know who's going to speak next. I thought this is a really useful skill when you're in business or when you're with any company. Okay, so I joined for that, and then I found out that I went from fearing the stage to enjoying it, from fearing it to feeling it. And through Toastmasters, as you mentioned, I competed in the international speech contest, and then for years I participated, and I really enjoyed it. From going to not only fearing public speaking, but also hating competition, I went to the World Championship of Public Speaking. So through all that, that's how I got into the desire to speak in front of people and to tell stories. And that is a skill that I then took to my job, and that completely transformed how I was able to help balance the books. You see, one thing that we need to do when we're at a nonprofit organization is asking for funds. So we go to different governmental organizations and we fill these forms to get as much money as we can to balance the books and to make sure that we can get our projects going. And what really works in those forms, in those, what do you call it, grant applications, I'm forgetting the vocabulary because it's been a few years. when we fill out our grant applications, if we can integrate stories, it can make a difference. And we got a lot of great results by integrating storytelling into our grant applications.
Wow. So here's what I'm hearing. Storytelling is not just something that is reserved for the competition. It's something that intrinsically helped you be better as a fundraiser, and you applied it in your job. And now that you are a coach for your podcast and you help different people, there are different frameworks and ways that you've been able to help people hone their message, clarify it in such a way that they can build more confidence. Would you mind sharing a little bit of your framework or one of the ideas you're like, this is so helpful for new people. I want to make sure that they understand this about storytelling so that it really counts.
And one thing that my main activities as a storyteller is for children and youth. I go to schools, and when I go to high schools and I teach kids from 12 to 18 years old how to tell their own stories. At first, they're like, I have no story. They're so young, they don't realize how much they've already lived and how much wisdom they carry with their life story. So by the end of the workshop, they've got personal stories to tell. Sorry, I'm drifting off.
You're good. So the question is, what is some of the frameworks you use with these kids? What are some of the ways that you help them go from, I don't even know if I have a story to I can do it?
So I was going to go to the main or the skeletal structure of a story. So depending on who I'm speaking to and how much time I've got with them, I might give a 3-point structure, 4 or 6-point storytelling structure. Or if I'm with someone for a long time, I might go to 12 steps. So what is a story and why does it resonate? I guess we have to go to why before the what. We don't make decisions rationally. We make decisions emotionally, and then we rationalize them. This is, you've heard about the right brain versus left brain, right? So the left brain is super rational, makes logical decisions. This is what I've developed working for 15 years with numbers. But the right brain is more emotional. It's the art, it's the heart instead of the head. So if you're able to touch and plug into the right side of the brain of someone, then you're able to sell what you've got to sell, whether it's an idea or a product or a grant application. So, and then of course you need to have the right elements so that you go to the left brain, especially with grant applications, by the way. Don't go all emotions there. If anyone's listening from nonprofits. So that's how we make decisions. We make decisions, you could say, with the heart, and then we rationalize. Even if you were to make it, how can I say this? Okay, I'll give you an example if I can.
Okay.
We've got a lot of time, right? We've got
Oh yeah, we got the time. Go ahead.
So imagine you're on the market to purchase a house, and so we did this a few years ago. We were looking for the perfect house. So we had a list of, what was it, like 26 criteria.
Mhm.
It needs to be this, it needs to have that, and every house that we went, it's like, oh, this is missing, and then we found one house. It checked all the boxes, and we're like, okay, I think this is the house that we're gonna purchase. We went to another one. Before even looking at the list, we go inside, we walk up the stairs, and we see the kitchen, and it's like, wow, this is really cool. And we see the lake from the window, and it's an open concept, and we're like, this is, we felt like we wanted to be there. We did not check all the boxes. And even after purchasing the house, we realized, hey, wait a minute, these imperfections, I did not see them. In the first house that is perfect on paper, we were analyzing, but with the second one that we ended up purchasing, this is where I am right now, we glossed over those imperfections because that's where we wanted to live. We made the decision with our heart rather than our head. And then we could rationalize, well, yeah, it's okay if there's a crack there in the foundation, we'll fix it eventually. But so the sellers didn't use a story to sell us the house, but we purchased the house because we were going with our emotions. And that is what a story does.
That's beautiful.
One
second. I wanted to add, let me add one thing really quick. I think this is really valuable for every single person that's hearing this, because that was a perfect example of feeling that it's the right choice and taking action. Often when you hear a story, the reason that people take action from what you're called action is because they see themselves as that hero. Maybe the first house did because it ticked all the boxes. You're like, well, this logically makes sense, but you didn't feel it yet. And when you felt the second story, you're like, you can justify it later, but like, this is the one.
We can justify
it later.
Yourself.
You saw your kids playing. Yeah, I love it.
What else did you want to add to that? We're still justifying it 5 years later.
Great.
But it's a great place. We love it, and we've got the perfect neighbors too. So what is a story, and how do you use it to sell? Well, a story, I like that you use the word hero, because that's how I've been approaching the stories, with the hero's journey. We can talk about that if we've got more time later on. But at its base, what is a story? It's a character that goes through a conflict and that resolves that conflict. So when I said there are 3 elements in a story, those are the 3 key elements. But there's one that's really missing if you really want to have a transformative power over anyone who's listening to that story, and it is the transformation.
Very true.
How is the main character different at the end than from the beginning? Because of that journey, because of that adventure that they went through. So that's the basis of a story. And when you're able to tell a story in which the main character, and usually if you tell your personal story, then it's yourself, the main character. So if you tell a personal story about your own personal transformation, which was positive, then anybody who's listening will think, wow, what can I do to have that same result for me? This is why when you're looking at a product or a service online, there's always these success stories of previous customers, and you say, okay, I want that too. What can I do? Oh, yes, I want to buy that. So that's why, like, if you're missing key elements in the story, it's not really a story. At least it's not a really great story. So it won't move people to act on what you're asking them to do.
Great point, Alexandre. I think one of the main values that you just brought up is really dialing in the transformation, right? If you can help this viewer or the audience be able to see how they transformed, and then be able to connect with that person and be able to see, wow, I could do that. I can feel that. That empathy, that connection is so important, because if you don't see the transformation, a lot of times you just see the before and after pictures on these things. You're like, well, I can see there was transformation, but I don't feel connected to it. I don't feel like I was at that point. What are some of the ways?
Yeah, you're right. That's a good point. If there's key element missing between before and after, it's like, well, I'm not sure. I'm not buying it yet. Literally.
So good. I'm not buying it, not just emotionally, but you might not buy the product because you're like, that before picture isn't me. And this after picture doesn't feel like it's something that I can achieve. Sometimes because the juxtaposition is so stark or contrasting, people don't feel like they can relate. This is why some of the really big names in business are like, well, I made $20 billion yesterday. You're like, I cannot relate to that. I'm sorry. Like, doesn't compute. It's like, doesn't add up on the left side. There's no logic there.
That's right.
But as soon as you hear someone that was in a similar situation go through specific challenges and come out the other side with a different point of view, with a different empathy, with a different idea, and now they're a better person for it, you're like, those are results I want. What that means for me is I can be more confident. What that means for me is I can have more money, or what that means for me is I can increase my connection with my family or my community. Those are the types of results that really help in a story. So what is one of those stories, one of your go-tos, Alexandre, that you're like, this is me in a nutshell? What is one of the stories you either share with kids or in a keynote that you're like the 5-minute version of like, this is Alexandre to the T, one of your favorite stories?
And you want it in how much time?
Like 5 minutes, something like that. Yeah.
5 minutes story. Well, some of my best stories are those with my children. So I'll try to give you a 5-minute version of a story about being in Europe. So it was the last day of our family trip, and we were in Paris. So the day before, on the same day that we're set to go back to Canada, we've got one last thing to visit, and it is the Eiffel Tower. And I've got the objective of showing that tower to my kids. My kids are 6 years old, both twins. And when I visited the tower like 30 years before, I was 5 years old, and I just remembered like it was a perfect moment because of the symmetry, the shape, the view from the top. And I wanted to give that moment of perfection to my kids. So we've got tickets to go to the top of the tower at 12:30. We've got everything packed up. We go to the subway. We try to go. I booked a locker to put all our stuff before we go up to the tower. Now, in the longer version, there are many things that go wrong that make us be late. There's construction on the subway, so we have to go out and take a bus instead. And then the bus is slow because of the traffic and the construction everywhere. People are walking faster than the bus. So the time is going by, and we don't have time to go to the locker before we go to the tower. And we have to run to the tower a few stops before because it was so slow. So we're running in the streets of Paris, trying to get to the eastern side of the Eiffel Tower, and the kids are with all their backpacks. I've got the big suitcase, and we're running over, trying to make it through like a sea of tourists. And the tourists in Paris are really, they're not in a hurry like we are. They're click, 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 click. And we're like, get out of our way. I've got a rendezvous. I have a meeting with perfection for my children. I need to show them this. And time goes by. We arrive on time at the tower, but the security guard says, no, vous ne pouvez pas passer. You cannot pass with your luggage, which is logical, right? But at that point, I'm like, no, you don't understand. We have to go. I've got a rendezvous with perfection. And he says, no. If you want, you can put your things 2 blocks that way at a souvenir shop. By this time, it's almost 12:30, the time of my tickets. So I give the tickets to the children and to my spouse. I take all of the luggage and I run to the souvenir shop. I get there, I'm exhausted, I'm sweating, but I leave my things. It cost me another 60 euros to leave my things there. I run back to the tower. By the time I come back, the line is bigger, is even longer, and I'm late. So I decide to be a little sneaky, and I tell one person, I'm sorry, I'm looking for my children. Have you seen my children? And then people are like, oh yeah, that's poor father, he's lost his children. Oh yes, I have lost my children. Please help me find my children. Oh, thank you, thank you. I think they're over there. So I was a desperate father looking for his lost children. They let me go in front of the line, and I caught up to my kids and to my spouse, and we got into the elevator together in order to have that perfect moment. So we're going to the top, ready for the panoramic view in the top, and to have this perfect moment. But it wasn't ideal, because after my half marathon below, I was I was frustrated, but also sweaty from all that running. But I didn't want to let go of that perfect moment. So I'm like, here, hey kids, come over here. Let's take a picture. Over here, we have to show your grandparents how much of a good time we're having. So you can understand, Brigham, that I ruined the moment. And the kids are like, what's going on here? So I was so caught up in trying to catch that perfect moment that I ruined it. And it's only later in the airport that I think they're writing in their journal about what they were doing. And my spouse asked them, hey, what was the best part of today? And I'm there thinking, oh man, I ruined everything. But maybe, they like the panoramic view, the symmetry, the shape, the solidity of the tower, the architecture. And one of them says, the giant pretzel and the smoothie on the second floor. And the other girl, she says, oh, it was really funny when Papa was running all over with our luggage. And then my spouse says, hey, it looks like we offered them a perfect experience, a perfect moment. Man, Brigham, I was chasing perfection all that time, but perfection was already there, right in front of me. The kids, my spouse, and our shared moments together.
Beautiful.
So when I share this story, I can stop it right there, or I can add one sentence. If anybody is looking for something more concrete, like what can I do now? What should I do? Something you might call the call to action. Brigham, if you ever find yourself chasing perfection, stop, look. Maybe perfection is already right in front of you.
Excellent. I felt that story. Thank you so much, Alexandre. So good. See, that's the power of great storytelling. I absolutely love taking experiences like this and taking people on a journey. I felt like I was there. I've never been to Paris, but I was like, well, now I feel like I need to really extra prepared for my luggage and all that stuff. So thank you for painting the picture of possibilities for me.
As the saying goes, Paris is an ideal city if you remove the Parisians.
That's excellent. That's so funny.
S'il y a des Parisiens qui écoutent, désolé.
Désolé. Okay. That's so good. It's actually an interesting story. So a few years ago, I started learning French. I mean, I never got great at it, but it's probably 6 months into the process. And I had a few people from Canada I was working with, and they were phenomenal, like helping me interact. I used a platform called italki to do language exchanges. I would teach them English, they teach me French. I did that a handful of times, probably a couple dozen times talking to people. Then there was this one guy from Paris that I talked to, and he was like, why are you learning French? He's like, you're so bad at it. And I was like, you're right. I'm not very good at this. And then like within a week, I had someone that taught French and Spanish in my district. And I kept mixing up, because I was talking to her in French, but I kept mixing up my Spanish, because I speak really fluent Spanish in comparison, with French. And she's like, okay, you need to stop mixing those languages. And it was so interesting, because that time it was almost like, have you seen dominoes fall and then you remove one domino and it doesn't keep going?
Right.
That was one of those moments where I let somebody else's judgment of me and what I wanted to do stop me from progressing. I removed that domino, and it was such a small thing. Like, she didn't mean to hurt my feelings, but because that was at the right time, at the right place. I removed that domino and said, you know what, you're probably right. I'm not going to keep working on it. And my French ended up getting worse and worse and worse. And then I just didn't pick it back up for years.
Brigham, I've heard this so many times, and I don't know if it's the same for many languages. I think there's something about French, and particularly, French people from France, that they are so, how do I say this without insulting the whole country? Like there's this idea that, oh, if you don't speak perfect French, then I don't want to listen to you. Like even me as a French Canadian, I go to Paris, and the Parisians talk to me in English because they're like, oh no, your French is not the perfect French. And it's like, no, parle-moi en français, s'il te plaît. So even me as a French speaker, I get frustrated from the level, from that I guess condescension. Condensation? No,
condescension. I like that.
Condescension. And I mentioned Paris because I think it's been Paris. I went to a few places in France, and it's only in Paris that I got this feeling of condescension that I never got elsewhere in France. And I'm hoping that it's not like this in French Canada. But I've heard so many people saying, oh no, my French teacher said that I shouldn't learn, so I stopped. If I had a nickel for every time I heard that, I'd have probably a few bucks. Which is still a lot of times.
A lot of times. And for me, one of the reasons why I got back into the language was because I stopped letting other people's opinions of things that mattered to them impact me.
Things that matter to them. Well said.
Because you think about it, I speak Mandarin. My biggest ploy, I guess, with learning Mandarin was I wanted to help people be able to understand the gospel of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Like I was a missionary over in Taiwan, absolutely loved the experience. It was challenging. It was something that was very eye-opening because the cultural difference is massive. But then learning Spanish, I was like, wow, this was way more comfortable because I already knew a lot of Spanish speakers. I played soccer in high school, so I had a lot of connections. But then stepping into French, I was like, I don't know anybody, but I really like the language, and it's really something that is a different form of expression. And I think one of the best freedoms we can have is freedom to express ourselves. One of the values of storytelling, whether you're doing it in English or French or Chinese, whatever language, is you can express yourself in a way that allows the world to know your heart and how it sings. One of the biggest values is to let your passions come through your message. Not everybody gets to share their passions. There are lots of people that withhold their experiences, and because they're not willing to actually share their ideas, the world isn't any better because of it. But like what you did today, Alexander, sharing that idea of perfection is all around us.
Yeah.
So beautiful. Thank you for that. What comes to mind? I know that we've talked a lot of different elements of storytelling. What comes to mind as some advice that you would give someone that wants to achieve the very highest level of speaking, to be world-class? Not someone that's just like an average speaker, but someone that wants to go to the very highest level and to compete. What would you tell those people? Because that's where I want to go. I want to be the very best, just like you, man. You're awesome. So what advice do you have for me and other people that want to go and be world-class?
There is so much. And look, I have a weekly coaching call. It's a group call. I can give you more details later, but many of these individuals that I coach on a weekly basis, they're competing. And I have one member, I think he'll be okay with me saying his name. He's been working on the same speech for almost a year now.
Wow.
Tommy had a story like in April last year, and he just shared the story, and he maybe talked about for 10 minutes, which is 3 minutes more than the competition allows. And we looked at all the elements, and I said, well, it's really good that you're taking this so early, because there's so many ways that we can go with this speech. You want a strong message, right? Something that is also original. So what do you want to share? And oftentimes people don't know what they want to share. Like, what is the message that they really want to share? And sometimes they've got a story that they want to tell, but it's not quite a story because there's not that transformation elements. So we need to look at that. So there's so many elements that I could go to and that I teach on a weekly basis. But I think the first thing that I'd like you to understand and to accept is that if you really want to have a world-class speech, something that can get to this level, this is the second place trophy for the World Championship of Public Speaking, you can't just wing it. It takes a long time. So this is why Tommy started working last year, and now he's going to the district level, which is the fourth level out of 7 for this competition. So start really early. Like, yesterday is too late. and find at least one person, one main person that can act as your coach, as your mentor, as a guide, someone who's been there already and who knows what it takes to get to that level. Because you don't know, this is a cliche, right? You don't know what you don't know. So if you're trying to make a great speech and you're rehearsing on your own, or even with friends or with a group, but you don't know how to make it better, I'm going to try something new. Yeah, maybe you can try it, but do you know what to ask your live audience there in order to get the correct feedback? Perhaps not. I can help you. I can, if we've got time later on. I've got so many things that if we've got time, I can tell you. But I'll tell you what are 2 questions that I ask my audience in order to know if my message is landing right. I'll tell you that later. But all these little elements that you should know in order to make your speech better every time that you offer it, and how, like, which word should you use to make the bigger impact for one particular sentence. Like, if you're looking for a world-class speech, every word counts. Every story counts, but every word in that story counts as well, especially when it's a timed speech. So I think if you really want to make it far, accept and understand that it's going to take a lot of time, practice, writing, rewriting, rehearsals, questioning yourself and your message. But it's a fantastic journey. Man, when I did this in 2022, my first speech that got me to the finals, the message is about reaching out to people with whom you disagree, to have a conversation with them, even if it's difficult. And throughout this process, I realized, it's actually my coach who made me realize, Mark Hunter, the 2009 world champion of public speaking, he was coaching me. And he asked me, I'll paraphrase, are you living your message? Is this what you really do? I said, of course, yeah, I reach out to people. And then he said, well, this example that you've got in your speech, you're doing the opposite of it. I said, what? Because in my speech, I was giving the example of someone that was so outside of my own thought process, my opinion, that I cut ties with her. And Mark made me realize I'm not living my message. So I reached out to her as I'm preparing this speech. I reached out to her. I hadn't spoken to her in 4 years, and man, creating a great speech can also make you a better person, because you realize that maybe some things you're not quite living up to in the message that you're sharing. So I mended a friendship because I was trying to share a message with the world. So work really hard, understand that it's going to take a lot of work and questioning yourself. And I hope you can accept that you might become a better person throughout the process.
Beautiful. You know, one of the things that I'm hearing over and over is, yes, go to, all these different areas to get feedback, but you also want to make sure you listen to the people that have been there and done that, those practitioners, because not all feedback is created equal. And I think the feedback you just gave was excellent.
Yeah,
because that comes from experience. Yeah, go ahead, Alexandre.
Here's what's interesting too. When you are looking for a coach, make sure that it's the right one for you. I won't be the ideal coach for everyone. because I have a particular style of coaching, but also of speaking. So if you go to one coach for advice and you go to another coach for advice, we might give you contradictory advice. They're both good. They're both great, but it can give you bring you into different directions. So that's something to watch out for. Don't try to get too many coaches. That's why I said at the beginning, get one main person that is your go-to. That is like it's like your head coach.
Mm-hmm.
You can have other feedback from other people, but make sure that you don't go into too many directions. One thing that I promise also to my clients is that I won't try to make them into me. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. I've got my own speaking style. You've got your own. And some people are still figuring it out. I'm still figuring it out. I try to do new things each time I go on stage. So I wouldn't want someone to see you on stage and think, oh, looks like he's been coached by Alexandre, because he looks the same. He's using the same mannerisms. So I think a great coach will be able to let you be you and discover you for yourself. So one of the lines that I say most often is, try this. Because especially with new clients, I'm not yet sure what makes them comfortable or uncomfortable, but I try to push them to try something new and see, okay, try the dialogue this way, see if it works for you. And if it doesn't, try it 2 other times, just to be sure that it's not for you. And then go in another direction if you must.
That's beautiful. One of the things I've done as an acting coach and as a theater guy for years is when I first get a script or a character that I'm analyzing, I play the opposite of a lot of the choices in the script. This is something I learned as a very young actor that allows you to know how far you can actually go in that character before it doesn't feel real, doesn't feel honest. And then you back it up so that it does hit in their scope of reality in those circumstances. And sometimes the best choices you make are not the thing that's written as far as the exact line. If they say, oh, and angrily say X, Y, or Z, you're like, wait a second. Rarely, if ever, will they give you a line reading in a script. They won't say angrily say this. They'll just say, here's the line. She storms off. What if you storm off because you're coy and playful? That's a completely different line reading. That's a completely different visual. And that playfulness might make the whole moment come alive. It just gave me an idea. One of the things that my wife did, we were in a play right before I served my mission. I was a young man. This was a ribald comedy. It was super funny. It was set in a proctology office in London, and just a silly family show that was about, It Runs in the Family. And she was this nurse that was in love with the other doctor. And this doctor had just found out that he has a kid with somebody that he hasn't seen in years. And the kid shows up and he's got all these tattoos and mohawk and just crazy. And the nurse comes in that was played by my wife. And she only has like 16 or 15 lines in the entire play, a small little character. But the character of Dr. Bonnie, if I remember right, but one of the characters, he's like, get out. And she's like, okay. But when he pointed, she went out the window, And then we realized there's no way for her to come back in at any point until the very end of the scene. And it ended up being one of the funniest choices in the entire show. So we ended up adding a little platform, and she came in with like cameras and played all these different farcical things because that tiny little character and that one choice impacted everything. So the bigger your choice is, the easier it is for you as a director or as a speaker to be able to craft that story. It was so funny. She ended up winning Best Actress for a little 15-line
good, nice
thing that was just phenomenal. So Alexandre, in the last few moments we have here, what is one of your go-to stories to close? I know all of us have these things that are like, man, this is a way that I close, this is the way that I close. I'd love to hear one of your favorite closing stories, like a 3 to 5 minute version.
Sure.
And we can wrap it up with that.
Before that,
go ahead.
2 questions that I have
Excellent.
my
Yes, I
audiences.
want those two
So,
questions.
especially in a contest, like I went to anywhere from 50 to 60 different audiences to try out my speeches. And at first I was getting all this feedback of what can you do to make it better? And it's all over the place. And I had already my main coach. I didn't need to have hundreds of people saying this is what you should do. What I needed to know was, is my message landing? So I asked this one very important question. What did you get out of listening to my presentation? There were different ways of phrasing this. What will you do as a result of listening to my presentation? What are you thinking now? And I just asked in one sentence. And if the answers were overwhelmingly the message that I was trying to share, then I knew I was doing it right. For a few weeks, it was not what I was going for. So that's when I knew, okay, I go back to my coach and I say, this is what people are getting out of it. Why? And then we figured it out. It's only this one small sentence that you need to add or remove in order to make that message so much clearer. And that is one of the best things that you can do when you're rehearsing. You don't need to be overwhelmed with feedback of what you can do. You just need to know if your speech is working as you intended.
Beautiful. Is it working as you intended? That was beautiful. I need the second question. Give me the second one.
Is simply, are there any distractions?
Oh, that's good. Any distractions?
Or any unanswered questions?
All right. Distractions or unanswered questions. I think that's a really great way to narrow down the focus of the feedback. Because one of the things, if we have too much feedback, it doesn't help anybody. Because it will just go in one ear, not the other. But if you can say, this is what I'm looking for my audience. What did you take away from it? Is there something missing? That's beautiful. One of the things my coach says, he says, what's awesome about what you experienced? So they look specifically for what was working and then what's missing. That's the way he phrases this same idea. Any distractions? I love that visual though. Like what's distracting? Because it could be a physical thing. It could be a vocal thing. It could be even a story. Like you said, you're sharing a story of someone that you didn't have the resolution with yet. And being able to have that resolution lets your message come through. So beautiful. Yeah. Thank you for that. I'm so glad we got those last two questions. That was worth the whole call. Worth the whole call. Beautiful. Well, Alexandre, take it away. Tell us one of your favorite closing messages, one of the ways that you like to tie a bow on a conversation or on a speech.
Well, I'm going to share something that maybe not a close for the conversation, but something that, as I said, I shared in 2022, and I didn't think this would happen, but it's even more important. And I told you how it's important to live your own message. So this will be a reminder for me as well. I told you that in one of my speeches, one of my message was to reach out to people with whom you disagree. Pick your conflict, man. In the United States, there's something, I think there was an election not so long ago, and you've got a new president that was there before. People are tearing each other apart. Families are breaking apart because they don't agree on some things. Can we do two things? Let's look at what we agree on and at least have that in common. And also, when we don't agree, can we talk about it? So the example I've got is, in every family, there's someone with whom you disagree. If you go to a family gathering, there's like that one person that sometimes has funny opinions. I would say probably half of your family has those opinions, but they don't share it as much, just by the way. But there's always that one person. There's probably two people, one person that on that side and another person on that side. And then when you're you're with one or with the other, it's like, all right, are you done yet? But we could get them together. At least go find that person. And this is what happened. We were at a family gathering, and I wanted to test this. So I went to her and I listened to what she had to say. And even when someone came over and said, hey, can you help me with something? They were trying to save me. I'm like, no, we're not done yet. And even when she said something like so strange, so out there, that really got me at my core, I'm like, this is really what you believe? I was ready to get out of there. But I tried to remember, no, this is the test. It's testing me. I need to stay here, see where this will unfold. And I stayed, and I listened, and I understood. And at the end of the gathering, everybody's leaving. I was still there, and my aunt is leaving. And she turns over to me and says, Alexandre, thank you for listening. You made me think about some things. I thought about it, and I said, me too. Like I thought about things too. So we could reach each other and find the common ground. Like we still disagree on many of those things. And for that speech, I called her back and I said, can you tell me more about why you thank me? And she said, so many people don't listen when I have things to share. And this is what we should do. There's people in your family, there's people in your neighborhood, there's people, your work colleagues, friends maybe, that you don't listen to because you don't agree with them. How about asking them and just listen, seek to understand before trying to be understood, as Stephen Covey would say. And once you do that, then you can, if not like be perfectly friends with that person, at least understand where they're coming from. And once you really understand, then you can come to, I don't know, something closer to peace between each other. So it might not change the world, but it might change or fix a relationship.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Alexandre. That gave me a lot of things to think about. And I appreciate the wonderful stories, the experience that you have shared and poured into the audience. Where can people find you, and how can people continue to connect with you?
Well, I'm on social media, especially Facebook and LinkedIn. You can search my name, Alexandre Matte, and you should be able to find me. My face is there. Or you see that it's written standout.cafe. The weekly coaching that I do is with my standout community. So we've got people meeting on a weekly group call. We alternate between mornings and evenings so that it's good for most people in the world. Go to standout.cafe and get your first month free, so you can even just try it out, listen to what people are sharing, and you, even when I'm coaching someone else, you can learn something as well, and you can apply it. It's like a really low monthly price, but like get the monthly trial, get your first coaching for free, and I think you'll be amazed at the results that you can have for yourself. And if you go to Standout Cafe, you can also, I think there are links there to get to my social media as well.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Alexandre. This was such a wonderful call. Great to have you. Wonderful opportunity to connect. I'm excited to be on your podcast in the near future when that happens. I know I had Roger on my podcast 2 weeks ago. It was awesome. So, man,
yeah, we didn't even mention that, but
yeah,
you'll come on our podcast with Roger and Alexandre. It's called Great Convos podcast. We just have conversations like we have today.
Wonderful. Well, I'm looking forward to it. We definitely will connect there, and I'll let you guys know when that is in the show notes. So anyway, have a great rest of your day, guys, and God bless. I'll hit this.
Thank you. Make stories that count. Bye.
Yes, take stories and make them count. God bless.